Hi, my name's Ash. I'm a trans man and a funeral professional. You've probably seen in the news that funeral services have been restricted to a smaller number of mourners. The best thing that you can do is check with your funeral director about who is able to attend and how many people can be there. But sadly, this virus just doesn't stop for us to gather together and say goodbye to someone. And I think that that's probably the hardest thing about this pandemic, and not being able to say goodbye in the way that we always have done and the way that we always imagined we would, by hugging and kissing family members and friends at a funeral. You might be restricted to just close family members or asked to keep 2 meters apart at all times. For that reason, it might be worth having a think about whether or not you want to attend a funeral. I mean, it might be more difficult with the physical distancing measures in place.
Even now, we do still have plenty of ways to honour, remember and celebrate someone who has died, even when attendance at a crematorium ceremony is not an option. If a crematorium ceremony is going ahead and you can't attend, you may still be able to contribute. You can ask if you can send a few words, a tribute. You could offer a piece of music and say why you chose it. Maybe suggest a favourite reading. And you could share the person's wishes for the funeral if those were known to you. Above all, don't be afraid to ask, because sometimes people in grief don't think of the most obvious things, because when we're grieving, our brains just don't work properly. There are also now celebrants who offer and organise funeral ceremonies that are completely online. Online ceremonies can be anything you want. Online ceremonies, virtual funerals, can be just as meaningful and supportive as a traditional funeral, with videos, music, rituals, moments where everyone does something together, moments of reflection, slideshows, live tributes, stories, anything. If you can do it on Zoom, you can do it in an online funeral service. If you choose to use a celebrant, whether religious or non-religious, you can let them know how you would like the person who's died to be described and what language you would like used. A good funeral celebrant will, as a matter of course, reflect the language that you use to describe someone. A good celebrant will not make assumptions, but they'll always ask what words you would like to be used, what parts of a person's history you feel you would like to share, and how you would like partner relationships to be expressed. If a funeral ceremony is taking place and you're not going to be there, there are still other ways that you can feel connected. At the time of the funeral itself, you could light a candle. You can play the person's favorite music. You can tell a story about them. If you're alone, you can take the time to write or to journal some memories of them and your feelings around what's happened. You can sing for them. You can have a glass of their favorite drink. You can do anything that reminds you of them and your relationship with them, why they're important to you. And you can do any of these things at any time. You can make a date with others. You can just agree a time and know that as you remember, so do they. And you're not alone. This virus has altered our worlds, and nothing is normal, and nothing may never seem like the same again. We don't know yet. But we can reclaim funeral rights from this expected and restricted path, which is currently excluding too many of us. You can create services and ceremonies that work in the circumstances in which you find yourself. So, be creative, ask questions, work with what you've got, and if it doesn't work or feel right, gather together, do something that does.
In 2019, I wrote a booklet called Making Informed Choices When Planning a Funeral, a guide for queer people. It's a guide for anyone who has questions about what happens when somebody dies, and it's about the things that we can do to make sure that our wishes as LGBTQIA+ people are respected after we die. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the way that we celebrate big life events at the moment is very different from what we're used to. Some of the advice that I gave in my booklet about the choices we had in 2019 simply aren't possible at the moment. But I want to reassure you that you will be looked after by funeral professionals, celebrants and faith ministers who are doing their very best to give you as much choice as they possibly can while trying to keep you and themselves safe. So some funeral directors have closed their offices to the public, which means that you might not be able to have a face-to-face meeting to talk about the funeral plans. But you'll still get the same standard of care, it's just that you'll get that by phone or video call or email, probably a combination of all three. And you can complete all of the legal paperwork to do with funerals remotely. Your funeral director will tell you exactly what you need to do and they'll guide you through that process. Normally, one of the things that we would ask during the funeral arrangement is if you would like the person who has died to be dressed in their own clothes or in a resting robe, and if anybody would like to visit them in the chapel of rest before the funeral. And I think it's really important for me to be upfront about this and say that many funeral directors feel that they can't safely offer these options right now because we don't really have a concrete answer on how long COVID-19 hangs around after somebody has died. And because of the lack of testing, we don't know exactly who has or hasn't had the virus. So we have to take these safety measures really seriously just in case. This goes against all of the natural instincts of a funeral professional. To say no to something so important is just alien to us. So people aren't trying to be cruel, they're just trying to keep their staff safe, trying to keep you safe, and just trying to keep everybody safe from the spread of this virus.
Hi, my name is Jayne. I'm a minister in the United Reformed Church. These are very strange and unsettling times, and all the more so if someone close to you dies. This can be very distressing, but there are some ways of easing the pain. Let the funeral directors or undertakers be your guide. They're there to help. They should be accepting of your situation, whatever that might be. Many will have a list of celebrants, priests or ministers they're able to contact, and they should know or find out for you the ones who are LGBT friendly. And if you'd like to, you may be able to arrange some kind of memorial or Thanksgiving service later on at a later date when all of this crisis has been over, when friends and family can join in freely. This is a distressing time for everyone, but it will be over one day. And in the meantime, keep safe and know that you are loved.
My name is Lyra, and I'm going to talk about writing a will. I'm a cancer survivor, and I was in the position of writing my will while I was thinking about death as a very real prospect. Thinking about death and thinking about your will is always going to be a very emotionally difficult thing to do. But when death is not certain necessarily, but something which might actually happen, that makes it quite a lot more emotional. And so I would like to encourage people to make sure that they have a will prepared. From a practical point of view, a will is a legal document. Broadly, a will is just a document that states who you are, appoints somebody as a trustee or executor of your will, and that must be someone who is not a beneficiary and somebody who you trust. Then you make a list of your assets and state what you would like to be done with your assets. And that will be signed by you in the presence of two witnesses. And those two witnesses should not be the trustee and should not be beneficiaries as well. You can seek legal advice from a solicitor to write your will. And if your situations are quite complicated, then you are very much encouraged to seek legal advice. This includes situations like if you're married, if you're separated or divorced, if you have children, and especially if there might be any uncertainty about how your estate might be split amongst dependents. If you don't have a great deal of assets, then writing a will on your own is not very difficult. You can find a number of templates online. It's also a good idea to write a wish statement alongside your will, and that is not legally binding in the same way that a will is, but it's a way to make sure that your wishes are put down on paper. This is something especially relevant for queer people and for trans people, because even though there's no way that we can force someone to remember us in the way that we want them to, it can help to have everything set out. So when I wrote my will, I included a wish statement which stated that I would like to be referred using she, her pronouns, and that I would like to be known by my chosen name. It also states who I would like to be the organiser of my funeral or memorial service, and a few minor details. I mean, things as minor as what music I would like to be played. It's not very complicated. It's an easy process to do. As I said before, it is an emotional thing to do, but sooner rather than later, not because you might die sooner rather than later, it is a good idea to just have everything set out so that everything is prepared, so that if something does happen, you're not dealing with this emotional thing on top of a stressful situation of facing your health and facing your mortality.
If you're looking for some support and advice about planning a funeral and about what your choices might be, I can recommend the Good Grief Trust website, which we've put the address for in the description of the notes of this video, and also the Good Funeral Guide. And if you are looking for some support specifically to do with being LGBTQIA+, then I recommend phoning the switchboard, and we've put the phone number and the website in the description below as well. There's also Action for Trans Health and Clinic U, and both of those descriptions are below. Take care.